Hey guys, Peggy here. I'm the admin and creator of the Taken by the Sea, Sunken Ships, Cities, and Oddities Facebook page. I am here today to introduce the author Hep Aldridge. Hep, I have read several of your Risky Business Chronicles books, and I am very excited to be talking to you today. So, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, Peggy. Once again, I'll say thank you for supporting me. I'm an independent author, so I don't have a big publishing company behind me. So basically, whatever I do, I do. So I always appreciate getting feedback and finding out that people are actually reading my books. And I would say 97, 98% enjoying it. My background, I'm a retired college administrator. I never dreamed I would be a writer. In fact, I always tell folks that I made myself a promise that when I finished my dissertation, I would never write anything again. It was so painful, but that didn't come to pass. And I'm glad it didn't, because I've really enjoyed writing during my retirement. I write about what I like. My interests are quite varied. I love science fiction. I love adventure. I love treasure hunting. And so I write about those types of things and include them in my stories to hopefully reach others that might have similar interests. I lived in New Mexico for a couple of years in high school. My father was with the Apollo program, so I kind of grew up as a space brat, more or less. He worked at White Sands Missile Range and some of the initial testing of the launch escape system for the Apollo capsule. So I got to be out there during the mid 60s, and that was a very interesting time because there was a lot of strange things going on in the sky. Yet I was able to witness and scratch my head and go, wonder what that's all about. He got transferred to Houston, Texas, to the Manned Spacecraft Center there. We moved there after I graduated from high school. From there, I attempted college, which didn't work. So I decided to join the military, which was not necessarily the best idea at the time, but it all worked out. When I got out, I decided to go back to school. I realized how important that education was. And so I finished my associate's degree at the local community college here in Florida, in Brevard, and was lucky enough to be hired by them as a paraprofessional. And I spent the next 35 years working there and retired as Dean Emeritus from the institution about 10 years ago. So during my retirement, I got into the idea of writing the story that had been in my head for about 10 or 12 years. I mean, different pieces of the story have been bouncing around, watching what was going on television, like on the History Channel, and the things that seemed to be of interest to the population. I thought, I've done a lot of that stuff, or I've experienced a lot of that stuff, or I know stuff about that. I wonder if I could weave a story together. And so I started doing that just with my imagination. When I was in New Mexico, I really got a taste of interest in treasure hunting. They have,
How did that happen?
well, there's lots of stories out there about, a lot of the robberies of trains and stagecoaches and hidden treasure. But what really got my interest was the idea of the Aztecs, which I had no knowledge of, the pre-Columbian cultures from Mexico, bringing treasure into the Southwest and hiding it from the conquistadors that were at the time ravaging Mexico. So treasure became very much an interest to me, and treasure hunting. I mean, I read all the books I could find and explored a lot of the information that was out there about the Lost Dutchman mine and a lot of the other so-called lost mines and gold caches that were hidden throughout the Southwest. When I got out of the service, I was stationed in Homestead, Florida, and while I was down there, I got certified as scuba diver, and I
Oh,
started hearing about all the treasure wrecks off the Florida coast. And so that immediately got me interested in the 1733 fleet, and ultimately in the actual 1715 fleet, which sank right off the coast of basically where I live now. So I decided to try and combine all those interests, my interest in space and my interest in archaeology, pre-Columbian cultures. I really got into that aspects of it over the years, and then the treasure hunting. And so it all came together. It was the genesis for the Sunken Treasure Lost Worlds trilogy that was my first plunge into writing for fun.
So what are some of the discoveries that you can share with us? Is there something you can share that you have found, either underwater or on land?
Sure. I consider myself always the bridesmaid, never the bride. So I can't say I've ever found any real treasure that won, gold or silver necessarily. I dove on Spanish galleon down in the Keys that was part of the 1733 fleet that had been excavated by a fellow by the name of Tom Gurr. It was the San Jose, and he got millions of dollars worth of treasure off of it, and that was quite a cool experience. Most recently, I took a dive team. I put together a dive team to go to Mexico to work with the Mexican government, researching a site on the Rio Candelaria in Campeche that the archaeologists thought was mentioned in Cortez's chronicles as a very busy trading post for the Maya on the river called Itzamkanac, but they had no real proof of it. And the site is right up against the river, and so they wanted to excavate or to look in the river to see if they could find any evidence of, its use maybe in at the site. So I put together a dive team and a videographer. We went down and worked with the Mexican government for almost 3 weeks, diving in a very low visibility environment. It's a very slow moving river, so your visibility was maybe 2 feet, 3 feet at the most. But we found enough artifacts and things underwater right there at the edge to help the archaeologists determine that it in fact was the site in Cortez's chronicles.
Wow.
It's in Canuck. Our discoveries actually got written up in National Geographic magazine, so that was pretty cool. That was very much a treasure for me.
See, and treasure is not always like gold or silver. I mean,
Absolutely.
treasure to me is like history.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. Look what's happening now with the new technologies, with LiDAR and with the exploration that's going on, and the discoveries that are being made that are absolutely changing textbooks almost yearly because of the
Amazing.
discoveries. Knowledge is treasure. So
It is.
that's one of the things that I love about it now, is that we're finding out so much more than we ever knew was out there.
That's amazing. I was very fortunate in high school. I had a high school teacher. He told us, he said, now you're reading up on history that was before your time, but you do realize that as you get older, history will be rewritten. And that's always stayed with me. I was very fortunate to have really good history teachers in high school.
History is an evolving area of study, and the more we find this, and look at space exploration.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the more we find out, the more we have to change the way we think about things. So for me, that's what keeps it exciting. That's why I like the archaeology, and I've been involved in that. I've taken expedition to Guatemala, Mexico, and I really enjoy the pre-Columbian cultures. I think they are one of the more interesting cultures on the planet. Everything from South America, Inca, Moche, up through the Olmec, the Maya, Aztec. They're all fascinating, and we're finding out new stuff about them every year, every season.
The Olmec are very interesting with their big heads, the big head sculptures.
It's yeah, that's the one that really, I think, kind of makes people scratch their heads, if you will. No pun intended. So the Olmec are very interesting, and I think that they will get more and more research done, and once we find out more about them, it may open some new avenues of research into the Maya, because the Maya actually copied the Olmec numerical system. So the Maya didn't originate it; they copied the Olmec. So you have to say, oh well, how did the Olmec come up with this? Anyway, so a fascinating field of research, and I love writing about it in my stories, in my books, whether it be the Central South American version or the Southwest. In my latest novel, covers the legend that Montezuma's treasure was taken out of Mexico and taken into the Southwest of the United States and hidden from the conquistadors. It's fun to write about those kinds of things, especially if they're things that you love. It's always good to write about what you love.
And it's interesting that you're writing about things that you have actually done.
Yeah, it makes it easier. I mean, I've never considered myself a writer. Let me start by saying that I'm a pretty good storyteller, I've been told over the years, but I really never considered myself a writer. And until I started writing my first book, I had no idea. I'm not an English major. I've never taken any creative writing courses. I just sat down at the computer and started typing one day, and it just started coming out. So it was a major learning process for me as I was doing it. And I thought that was cool too, because I was having to learn and ask a lot of questions, and I made a lot of mistakes, but I learned from them. So I thought, well, I'll try writing a book. And as I got into the book one of the trilogy, I thought, okay, I'll write a book. And I got to page 340, and I realized that the story I had in my head, I only had about a third of it down on paper.
Oh, wow.
And so, not wanting to write a book that was thicker than War and Peace, I thought, I better break this up. And so I started breaking it up into the segments, and ultimately wound up with the three books. And one does lead to the next and does lead to the final third one. So anybody that starts reading my books, Sunken Treasure, Lost Worlds is the first book. Sunken Treasure, Lost Worlds, Revelations is the second book. And Sunken Treasure, Lost Worlds, Encounter is the third book. So I'll tell you right up front. Books one and books two end in cliffhangers, so don't be disappointed.
So for those who are new to your books, can you tell them a little bit about the Risky Business Chronicles?
Sure, it's basically a story about a guy that retires from education, go figure, and decides that he wants to start a treasure hunting company. They live in Florida, and he studied the wrecks and the treasure that supposedly is lost off of Florida's East Coast. And he gets a bunch of his friends together and says, hey, this is what I want to do. You guys want to be part of it? And then they agree. And the group that he picks from, or the friends that he chooses, all come with their own set of unique life experiences and skills. And so they all kind of add to the company that he's calling Risky Business. And he feels like they would be extremely beneficial. Idea is great. They get ready to get into it, and they start looking into it more. And they find out that the laws, state laws in Florida, have been set up such that an independent person who wants to go treasure hunting has to pay a lot of money to be able to go out and do it. And they find out that the believe it or not, and this is a true fact, the underwater land within the 3 mile limit off the coast of Florida is all been leased. So if you wanted to treasure hunt within the 3 mile limit, you had to pay for a lease to treasure hunt in a certain area. So the idea, you have to provide your own boat, you have to provide your own equipment, you have to provide your own divers, you would have to pay the leaseholder X amount of dollars, and it's a few $1,000s for a lease to dive one season. And then if you happen to find something, the state of Florida gets 20% of what you find right off the top.
Ooh.
And then you and the leaseholder have to split whatever's left 50-50. So let's just, as an example, you find something that's worth $100,000. All right. Well, the state of Florida gets $20,000 of it right off the top. So that leaves you $80,000 worth of treasure or whatever. Now, after having paid the lease holder already, you have to split that $80,000 with that person. So now out of the $100,000, you as the treasure hunter wind up with approximately $40,000. Now it's a very basic breakdown, but it's very much like that. And so it's like, wow, that just didn't seem fair. Well, so in the story, the guys from Risky Business think that it's not fair. And so they almost decide to become pirates and go kind of the illegal way. But they find kind of a interesting twist in the story that takes them on a different direction. And then the story builds from there, based on the 1715 fleet history.
So it's full of suspense.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of twists and turns. One of my readers actually in their review said story has more twists and turns than a West Virginia country road.
Oh,
I thought that was kind of cute. But as I said, each book, the first three books build on one another.
okay.
Book two, a discovery that they make leads them into a search for the lost golden library that's supposedly in Ecuador.
Oh,
So
and that's an actual thing, an actual myth or legend.
oh yeah. In fact, in I believe it was 1976, a Scottish explorer by the name of Hall mounted an expedition to look for the library in the Taos region of Ecuador, and one of the members of his team that he put together, and I think he did it a lot for publicity, was a Neil Armstrong astronaut. And so, of course, they didn't really find anything, but the legend has been out there for a long time and it persists to this day. That's kind of, I tied that into book two a little bit. And then book three, which is the culmination of the entire story, wraps things up and sets the stage for another adventure after that, which ultimately wound up being book four.
So can you give us a little sneak peek about book four?
Yeah, book four is another treasure quest, and it's looking for Montezuma's treasure that may have been taken out of Mexico and into the Southwest. The Risky Business team kind of gets a lead, a mysterious map that seems to indicate a trek that Aztec took from Mexico into the Southwest. And so they decide to try and follow up on it. And so they head out to New Mexico and begin looking into the lead that they have and see where it takes them. And of course, it takes them into another adventure.
Sounds exciting. So, Hep, what do you think is next for you? Where do you think your next writing adventure is going to take you?
I've been thinking about that a lot. And, I've written about sunken treasure that's underwater. I've written about a now sunken or treasure that is on land. And I was toying with the idea of where could a group like Risky Business go to new that wouldn't be into the same old thing, which if you can call any kind of treasure hunting the same old thing. And so I'm toying with some ideas. not to give too much away because I'm not sure how it's going to go. But let's just say it'll be a different venue, a different area, uh, possibly a different treasure, maybe something to do with the Egyptians, which
Oh,
there's a lot going on over there too.
oh yeah.
So we'll see. I don't know. It's still it's still kind of rolling around and trying to coalesce in my brain. But it'll be treasure hunting.
It will be exciting for sure.
I hope so. I hope so. I think the excitement is really important, but I think one of the most important things in my writing, and once again I came to it kind of intuitively, is when I read a book, I like to be able to relate to the characters. I
Yes.
like to be able to feel like that they're real people. And so when in my writings, I characterize my people as real people. I mean, they have good days, they have bad days. They're funny sometimes, they're angry sometimes. But basically they've got good hearts. And so they try to do the right thing as much as they can. And I want my characters to be relatable. And from my reviews, I think I've achieved that to a greater degree. When some of my reviewers write, "I'd love to be able to sit down at a bar and drink with this whole crew,"
Oh
or "I'd
yeah.
love to sit down and hang out with them because they sound like they're a great fun group of people." I try to do that, but I try to do it just how I would write about somebody that I knew. Let me put it that way.
So Hep, can you tell us a little bit about the characters in your book?
Well, sure. The main character is Colton X Burnett, Colton Xavier Burnett, who is oh, had an interest in treasure hunting for his entire life, and is basically the leader of this motley crew that he puts together. He calls on a lot of his friends to be part of the team, um, because of their various backgrounds and their levels of expertise and what they bring to the table in supporting risky business. His right hand man is Dmitry Sokolov, who is Russian heritage but American born, um, and kind of unique. Let me put it that way. I was trying to think of a good word to describe him that uh, would be okay for viewing, but he has a unique perspective on life. Let's put it that way, and very much a zest for living.
Is
Joe,
he an adventurer?
oh yeah, all these people, all the characters in the books are divers, and they all have different levels of expertise in diving. Um, and Joe is basically a tech guy. He is the person that has a double E degree, electronic engineering and electrical engineering, and has worked in government contracting on for DARPA. Uh, the doc is basically your linguistics specialist and academician researcher who just also happens to be a graduate of the Coast Guard Academy and a pararescue diver. And
Wow.
in some point in time after that, he decided to go in a different direction and started going into linguistics and research, and earned his doctorates in those areas, and is an expert in very esoteric and ancient languages around the world. Lawrence, another one of the team members, basically graduated from Harvard Law School, and he is a wine connoisseur. Doesn't practice law, but he is probably what I would consider the ladies' man of the group, and quite a character in and of himself. Tony is probably one of the younger members of the group, but he is a computer wizard, self-taught, educated, went to college to get a degree in computer engineering, and got bored because he was so far ahead of what they were teaching, that he didn't really graduate, but he did hack into the college computer and give himself a doctorate in computer science, which of course is not really a good idea. Another member of the team, Nils, is a retired NASA engineer and longtime friend of Colt's. He's a diver, and he handles most of the coordination of the recovery efforts that Gus and his crew on the Falcon. He's an integral member of the team and one of the original Risky Business team members. And I need to mention that this is not just a guy's novel. There are two members of the team that are female that are seriously badass ladies. And I mean that in the nicest way. O'Reilly, Shannon O'Reilly, is our helicopter pilot. She is an ex-CIA operative who we recruited from a friend of Colton's, who has an aerospace research company. Colonel Duncan Fitzsimmons, retired Army and helicopter pilot, has started an aeronautical company in Bithlo, Florida, which is just west of the Space Coast towards Orlando, and has created quite a little empire for himself in research and aeronautical things for the government and for private industry. And then Reggie is one of the newest members of the group. She came to us as a person who had her own company for adventure explorations for the thrill seekers in South America. But she also has quite a bit of baggage you'll find out about if you read the stories. Interaction between the guys and the ladies is a lot of fun to write about. They make sure that the guys don't get too macho on them and keep them grounded, if you will.
Keep them in line.
Yes, well, they try to anyway, as much as possible. Gus Falconetti is the captain of the Falcon, which is the research and diving vessel that the Colton hires to help them dive off the Space Coast here in Florida in their search for a Spanish galleon. So, as I said, all of them have a unique set of skills and life experiences that they bring to and add to the team to make it an interesting and diverse group of individuals. And Colton respects their opinions. He knows that he can trust each and every one of them, and implicitly, and so they feel the same way. So it's a very tight-knit team, and they work very well together. And I think that's the tapestry that I tried to weave with my characters, so that when you look at them and you take a step back, you can see the bigger picture and you go, yeah, okay, I can see how these folks could work together and how they could be successful in what they do.
Wow. As you're describing them, I'm just kind of envisioning them all around a table, immersed in conversation. I can't imagine what kind of topics they would be talking about. That would be amazing.
Very diverse. Very diverse conversations at the very least. I think very interesting. Like I said, I want these, when the reader reads this, I want them to create their own idea, their own image of who these people are, what they look like. I want the reader to decide who this person is within their mind and let them go with it from there, because that's very important. Helps them invest in not only the story, but in the person's life that's being talked about in the story.
Well, and with me, when I'm reading books like this, it helps me become part of the story. It's like I'm right there with them as I'm reading this. It's so real.
That's what a writer strives for, and that's what I've learned over the years now that I've been writing, is that's a key factor in success of a story. Like I said, I came into this not knowing any of this kind of stuff, but having been a reader all my life and reading all kinds of books, I knew what grabbed me and what and sucked me into either the history or the story or the world that is created by the author, that I thought that's what I want to kind of try and do. But I didn't knowingly make myself try and write that way. But as I'm telling the story, that's what is created. So that's really kind of cool. I enjoy it. That's why I enjoy going back and rereading some of the stuff that I've written, because it's like, oh yeah, that works. That's pretty neat. And yeah, these guys, that's how they would do that. They're not normal people. They're not superheroes. They don't have superpowers, but they do have skill sets that allow them to overcome a number of challenges throughout the books.
So, who is your favorite character?
Oh, the leader, Colton, Dr. Colton Burnett, I think would have to be my favorite. I mean, he's the catalyst for the crew, but as I said, each of the team members bring something to the story. There's nobody there that's just fluff. I think they all play an important role.
I think it's amazing how you have put into these books your own personal experiences, historical information, myths, legends. I think it's just a wonderful combination. I like how you have put them all together, and that I think they mesh very well. As a reader, having read your first 3 books, it's like, oh, these mesh very well together. It was easy to go from like one topic to the next topic. And
Yes.
it sucked me in. I just wanted to keep reading. And I got to tell you, I got your first book for a Christmas present. And I had to wait a couple weeks to get the next 2. I ordered them together. And I couldn't wait. And then I finally got book 4, and I've got to read it. I haven't read it yet. I can't wait.
I hope you enjoy it as much as you've enjoyed the other 3. And like I said, I look forward to hearing from you and getting some feedback, because that's how I continue to grow as a writer and make sure that I'm hitting the mark that I'm trying to set for myself as a writer, as an author. It's really important for me to hear feedback and get feedback from my readers.
Well, for me, everything that you have described, the goal that you have set in writing these books, you have met.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It makes me feel good when I hear that. Maybe I'm doing something right.
I think so. There's so many different characters that it's like, oh, you could write a novel just on this person alone, like Dimitri. His character is a wow.
I have been asked if I was ever going to try and write individual stories about the characters individually. I can't say that I have, but the backstories that I've created for most of my characters is such that I potentially could write a book that would have at least a chapter or 2, if not more, about each one of them, and fill in their backstory. So, we'll see what happens. I got my hands full right now with potentially what's coming up for book 5, if there is a book 5. So hopefully I'll sell a lot of books, and that'll help me be able to pay for the next one.
Man, I hope so. I wish you a lot of success with your books. I know I love them, and I know other people will enjoy them as well. And if you don't mind me sharing just a little bit of personal information with you. Is that okay?
Sure.
I have ADHD. I don't know if you're familiar with what that is. It's
Yes.
problems with attention and sitting still. And I have not been able to read a book in a very long time, but when I got your book number 1, I was able to actually sit and read it. It just captivated me so much that I just couldn't stop. And that's the first time in a long time that that's happened. And I really appreciate it. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. That's wonderful. That's very, very good to hear. That's a compliment. Thank you very much.
So where can someone find your books?
My books are on Amazon, Amazon.com. They're available in paperback, ebook, and Kindle Unlimited. So it's Kindle books or Kindle Unlimited. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, like me, I hope. And also you could visit my webpage. It has information about all the books and additional photographs and additional information about me. So we'll look forward to having folks visit those sites. And I do want to say, if you do read my books, and if you happen to, if you do like them, or even if you don't like them, take time and go to Amazon or Goodreads.com and leave a review. Reviews help me get information. In other words, what my readers think, and it's good feedback for me. Also on my website, if you order the books from the website, I will send you a signed copy of the book. The reader can have, if they want to add to their collection, a signed copy of any of my books.
Does it come in different languages? Do your books, are they printed in different languages?
No, they're not. I actually looked into that. It's very expensive to have a translation done. I think the next big step that I probably will take is do Audible books.
Oh, okay.
Because I've gotten a lot of quite a few requests for the Audible version, and I keep telling people it's not available yet. And I'm looking into it. And if I do that, I will be the narrator, or I will be the voice on the Audible book. So
Oh, wow.
So not only will you get the book that I wrote, I'll be the person that's reading it to you or providing the information. So that's kind of fun. I think that's going to be a challenge, but it'll be a fun next step. And it gives me a chance to refresh my memory on, looking back on what I wrote in book 1, now that I just finished book 4, thinking about a book 5. It always helps to kind of review, if you will. But as I said, being an independent author, all my advertising takes place on social media. I don't have a big advertising budget. If somebody reads my book, tell your friends, because that's what's all about. It really makes a difference in helping me, letting more people know about my stories, about the subject matter, because it's kind of unique. Amazon likes you to put your book in a category, so that they can have that information available to people that are searching. But it's like, so is it a thriller? Is it a mystery? Is it an action adventure? Is it treasure hunting? And you can only pick so many categories. Well, my stories are all of those. I mean, there's always mystery involved. They're always a thriller. There's something going on that keeps you on the edge of your seat at times. And there's always a search for treasure. And sometimes there's some other interesting stuff that happens. One of the things that I had fun doing was exploring in book 4, the spiritual world or the mythology of the Apache out from the desert Southwest. That made for a little interesting story twist that I included in book 4. Sometimes supernatural is a big category that people write in. I don't necessarily write in that category, but there could be some aspects that someone who likes that would enjoy in my books, as well as science fiction.
It sounds like your books cover all these topics. So when you're reading them, you get all these topics in one.
Yeah, and they're all topics that I love. You know, if you read about history, or if you're interested in history, if I write about history, the history that I put in my books is as accurate as can be. The technology that I write about in my books is as accurate as can be. The equipment that is used by the team in my books is accurate. You'll know when you get to the part that's the novel part of it, that's the made up part. But if people want to fact check me on my diving equipment and situations, or on vehicles, or aircraft, or weapons, or history, any of those things, and legends. You know, if we talk about a legend, you'll find that there's some basis, there's accuracy in all the other parts, but even in the legend part, there's a lot of information out there about what we talk about.
So you do a lot of research on these topics before you write them,
Oh,
before you write your books.
absolutely, absolutely.
Wow, that's amazing.
I've been lucky because well, actually, all four of these books now, I have written about things that I have thought about, have researched for years. So I felt fairly comfortable with it. And so my research didn't have to be as extensive as if I was starting brand new. So that was good. And I've been able to come out with one book each year now for the last 4 years. This fifth book goes into a different area, presents the team with new challenges that I haven't necessarily had experience in. So I'm having to do a lot more research for it than I may have done for the others. That's going to be interesting too.
So as a female, I have to ask a question. Will Colton ever find a love interest? I know he has like a brief love interest, but will there be a little bit of romance somewhere along the way?
Well, he has a lady friend who is a professional. She is an archaeologist and art historian, very well known around the world. Her credentials are top notch. And so she gets called in to work at either sites where artifacts are being recovered or discovered, or museums where artifacts need to be investigated to determine their authenticity or their place of origin or whatnot. So it keeps her moving around the world, much like Colton. There's there's something there, and we'll see how it progresses, and it very well could blossom, if you will. I'll just leave it up to the reader to determine how or where it goes from here. But Tess is a formidable lady in her own right, and so she and Colt complement one another.
So it sounds like you could write a whole set of novels just on her alone, on her adventures.
I have to say that yes, and when I develop my characters, all of them, there's in my mind I create a backstory. Okay, so why is this character the way they are? You know, why do they do the things that they do? Why do they respond the way that they respond to a situation? I think it gives them depth, and it gives them interest. And once again, I think I mentioned a little bit earlier, it helps the reader really buy into them and make them feel like, oh, this is a real person.
Yeah.
And so the reader can get invested in the story and maybe feel like they're involved in it. I've heard that from some of my readers, is that they feel like that they're right there with the team as they're doing certain things, or they're making certain discoveries. And that's very gratifying, because that's what I want my readers to feel. I don't want what I write to be superficial. And I don't want my readers to go, oh, well, they'd never do something like that. Or that's, well, of course that's what they do because that's what's in all the other stories. I really, really try and stay away from that. This is a unique group of individuals. Their uniqueness and their interactions really, I think, are what carry the stories and make them enjoyable for the reader.
Well, I've read your first three books, and I have got to tell you what what you are saying is spot on. That's exactly how I felt when I was reading this. I felt like I was sitting there at the table with them, drinking a beer or just chit chatting, listening. I loved it. It's like I really got sucked into it, and I could binge read it for hours.
I just got a review. Like I said, it takes me about a year to write a book. I just got a review from someone who has just found me as an author, and the review said, I read all three of the books in the trilogy last week, and I just finished reading book 4 today. Could you please write faster? I said, come on, guys, give me a break. I need a little time here. But that's very gratifying when you find someone who gets that excited about what you've created. It's very nice. It's very neat. As I said, I really appreciate the reviews. If a person takes time to read the books and enjoys them, I really like hearing from them, hearing what they think, because it keeps me informed as to, if am I achieving the goals that I've set for myself as a writer. So it's fun to hear. The other the other thing that I keep getting is, okay, so when is this going to become a movie?
Yes.
When when
Yes.
is Sunken Treasure Lost World going to become a movie? And I have no intention. I never started writing with that in mind. I never thought about it until I started getting some reviews. And so my only thing would be, I have no intention of pursuing that avenue necessarily. However, if you happen to know a producer that might be interested, please put them in touch with me. I'd be happy to speak with them.
Oh, it would make a great TV series.
Well,
It would be
thank you.
awesome.
I appreciate that.
You could do little cameos in the background.
No, I'll just keep writing. Thank you.
Well, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time out to talk with us today. Your books are just awesome. Can't wait to read book number 4. I have not read it yet, and can't wait to see what you have next. I'm super excited.
Well, thank you, Peggy. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and to, get this information out to the folks in your group who might be interested. That's what I keep trying to do is, outreach is very important. So I'm on social media, as I said. You can like me on Facebook or follow my author page on Amazon, Twitter, and Instagram. And feel free to go to my website, and you can shoot me an email from there. And I will respond. I promise you, if I get an email from you, I will respond.
Well, Hep, thank you so much. Can't wait to see what you got coming next.
My pleasure.